Dominic, thank you. B, if you're in the room, I want to thank you as well. I know that bringing us all together is a tremendous amount of work. I also want to thank Bruce Miller and his colleague Ian at Trinity College for the brainchild of the Global Brain Health Initiative and the inclusion of artistic animateurs like Dominic, like Josh Kornbluth, and others. Today, I know our project is to understand what our San Francisco Bay Area platform is and exploring the power of art and the power of festival in the pursuit of longevity and neuroplasticity. Dominic gave me the challenging title of radical aging. It makes sense. Obviously, it's San Francisco and it's the Bay Area, and we are the heartland for dispelling myths and questioning assumptions, opening minds, and posing new ideas. So with that challenge, I went to look at what would be my definition of radical aging. And like Carol, I went to how I define feminist consciousness is how I define aging consciousness. And that is that we have a belief that we can all self-actualize. We have the knowledge that there are obstacles and limitations, but that we have the wisdom and experience to expand the possibilities. This harks back to graduate school days and a Hegelian dialectic, but you can see that it is a paradox that we're constantly twirling with. Let me now go. This is very much, we're a part of the same wavelength. Dominic, my colleagues from UCSF. What I wanted to do is just give a quick grounding on the Bay Area's longevity frontier. What are our cultural, political, scientific antecedents to the work and the moment that we're in right now? So please, think about this timeline. This is very particular to me. You will have your own timeline. You'll include some of my icons and also have some of your own. Post-it notes over there, because I would love to expand this timeline to include yours as well. So 1960s is when I start. I'm at UC Berkeley. I have met and worked with two phenomenal women who started their work in 1960. Dr. Paula Timiris offered the first course on the physiology of aging. Phenomenal. Dr. Marian Diamond, who was given the incredible responsibility of being one of the people to dissect Einstein's brain, and who, for her lifetime, underscored what was happening around brain and neuroplasticity. An incredible legacy that she's left us. The free speech movement, which we've been kind of mentioning, the student movements of the 1960s, very much a part of what is the fabric, which I think you're going to be hearing throughout the day, around the role that activism has played in what we see are the opportunities of being here in San Francisco and the Bay Area. The White House Conference on Aging is a marker. This began in Washington during the Eisenhower administration. Gerontology programs sprung up. UCSF, San Francisco State. There was a phenomena of the Centers for Learning and Retirement, understanding that people wanted to continue to learn over their lifetime. CIL, the Center for Independent Living. Ed Roberts, Judy Heumann started that in Berkeley as students to begin with, and then as activists. That issue of disability, I think, encompasses all of us. The Gray Panthers, which didn't start in Berkeley or San Francisco, but which harks to our activist nature, and we love the fact that Panthers are a part of our legacy. And ASA, the American Society on Aging, Unlock, which began in San Francisco as one of the country's first daycare facilities for older adults. And since we're here as artists as well, it was also in the 1970s that Governor Brown, his first administration, he started the California Arts Council. What we know about San Francisco is that we have more artists per capita than any other city in this country. We've got an incredible legacy to follow. Then in the 1980s, we see Age Wave. Ken Dykewald starts this consulting business for the Fortune 500 companies here in the financial district. Mary Furlong starts SeniorNet. She sees the gap around how people, older adults, need to know how to use the technology to stay with it. And so she starts SeniorNet. The Joint Genome Institute, researchers from the lab, from UCSF, from the Max Planck Institute, start to put together the whole mission around mapping the human genome and the DNA sequencing. This always gives me chills. It started here. The freedom of expression. We were the first to respond to the attacks on the arts. There was a privatization of the arts movement during Republican governors and Republican presidents. Cultural equity was the term that we were using to make sure that our city, our state, our country was looking at the cultural needs of everybody. In 1990, Mark Friedman started Encore. He did Experience Corps. He went on to do the Purpose Prize. He's gone on to write books. He has been at the zeitgeist of aging. And I love the one thing that I remember hearing on NPR when he talks about the fact of what it was like to come into a hotel away from home, use his AARP card, and then also ask for 2 cribs for his children. This is the complexity of the life stages that we're in. Multimedia Gulch, here, south of Market. We're in south of Market by 1 block. This is where all the sort of technology around software and interactive media happened here. The UCSF Memory and Aging Center started in the decade as well. The Dare to Be 100 is a book that was written by Walter Bortz, Dr. Walter Bortz at Stanford. Phenomenal. He really began to push that button on how exercise, how the thermodynamics of aging worked. And I was reminded of that today in the New York Times. And it was also the place where Xerox PARC, down the peninsula a little bit, really brought in artists in residence to begin to push the technology even further and make sure that it was bringing its users along. The 2000, we saw the Osher Lifelong Learning Institutes beginning to take shape. UC formed 4 campuses to look at aging and technology, as well as other technology issues. Stanford's Longevity Center started in 2007. Seminal research is happening there. The Villages, their roots were 2001 at Beacon Hill in Boston. But it was in 2001 I had architects taking me to Mission Bay saying, couldn't we build it here? Very active time for us thinking about that. I have to put IDEO on the map here because the work that Gretchen Addy did starting in 2007, again, trying to advise the private sector to pay attention to the older market. It is not what you think. Everybody over 45 do not encounter the same issues. The life stage is complex. And then we've got the wonderful, and there were cultural antecedents to this, the work by Elizabeth Blackburn to discover telomeres, those tiny hairs at the ends of our DNA that as the cell divides gets shorter, and her thinking about what can intervene and prolong our neuroplasticity. There is then 2010, we come up with the age-friendly phenomena. We've got the age-friendly universities. We've got Aging 2.0, which you'll hear a bit more about. And we have the GBHI fellows. We've got an extraordinary history. And I know that you can help me populate this timeline with the people that have been important to you and make this moment as rich as possible. What I want to just now show you the pictures of the people you just heard so you have an image in mind. Paula Timoris, Marion Diamond, who I mentioned, here she is with a human brain and the hat box. She carried the human brain in the hat box into the classroom to do instruction. She was so committed to neuroplasticity. The last conversation I had with her over lunch, she was saying, my rats are living longer. I'm getting credit within the other researchers. They're living 6 weeks longer. I said, why? And she said, a little TLC. And she rubbed her hand like it was a pet rat. She was extraordinary. Len Hayfleck, who really won the Nobel Prize around cell division, Walter Bortz, who I just mentioned, Dr. Keltner, UC Berkeley, the science of happiness, the science of the greater good, really understanding the role of empathy and happiness, mindset on what lies ahead. Andy Sharlock, who's known for Aging in Place, which we will continue to talk about. How do we make this, our future generations, feel comfortable in being able to stay in their homes? Elizabeth Blackburn in her laboratory. Artists like Anna Halprin, who are dancing through their 90s. Ruth Asawa, who has, I think, she is one of the patron artists of San Francisco. Joan Holden, some of you may not know, behind the scenes, she was the playwright for the San Francisco Mime Troupe. She was the playwright for Geezer Theater when we started Geezer Theater at UCSF, the playwright at Stagebridge. Incredible, brought the activism into the aging sphere. Rhodessa Jones teaching in our jails. Stuart Brand, who's been a futurist, doesn't like that term, but he's got it, who's been bringing technology and all these other spheres together. Mary Furlong, who I've mentioned, who does the Boomer Venture Summit. Ken Dykewald. There is Mark Friedman, a nod to him. And then Maggie Kuhn, a nod to her. Jenny Hansen, who was at Unlock for years, served as the AARP president, a resident of San Francisco. Paul Clayman, who is here in the audience, who has educated me a tremendous amount, started AgeBeat, started to organize the journalists across the country to get the story right about aging. Ted Rozek, who is a sociologist based at Berkeley, taught at the CSU. His books, 3 books, which I really highly recommend: The Longevity Revolution, The Making of an Elder Culture, and if you want to go back, he's the one who wrote The Making of the Counterculture and gave it that term. Bernard Osher, I would not be here without Bernard Osher. We have 2 philanthropists, which I just want to give a nod to. Bernard Osher has put hundreds of millions of dollars, not only into Osher Institutes, but into the belief of higher education. And we also have Warren Hellman, who is one of the profound cultural and scientific funders of what we experience today. So I probably should, how am I doing on time? 5 minutes more? 3, okay. All right, our roles in radical aging. I think you've been hearing it from the Encyclopedia of Aging. To be truly, deserve the mantle of radical aging, we've got to really think clearly about these roles and see what we can best do in our daily lives. I assume all of us are caretakers, either professionally or personally. So with that in mind, I want you to think about how you can continue to be a pioneer, how you can be an activist, how you can be a part of creating the new identity, setting the goals and aspirations, and reframing the cultural expectations. You've heard that from my colleagues before. Researchers and translators, we need more translators. The science that is happening here, the research, we need to understand this so that it can matter today and in the future. One of the things that we're doing at Berkeley is we have a 4th age salon, which I started 6 years ago. I found out that nobody had studied the over 80-year-old learner. 25% of my membership now is at 75 and older. I want them to be with Ollie for their lifespan. I've got to make it relevant. I've got to know what's on their minds. Well, how do they want to learn? What do they want to learn? How do they want to learn? So one of the things I discovered this year with my 4th age salon is they want to understand this phenomena of personalized medicine. What is being asked of them? This is a very different relationship with their doctors than they've had. This is one of our topics, makes us one of the translators. Poets and philosophers come from all fields. When I hear Bruce Miller talk, I think of him as a poet and a philosopher. He's a musician, but I also hear what he is doing around empathy is very, I think, very artistic. Robert Haas, Jane, what's Jane's last name? Hirschfield, thank you. Jane Hirschfield was one of the first fellows. Okay, inventors and designers, universal design, co-designing. We're working with undergraduates right now. We're looking at gait. We're understanding that gait has cognitive potential. If you can make sure that you are increasing your gait, widening your stance, picking up the pace, that all of this and being mindful about it can be helpful. So we've got an undergraduate team working with an OLLI team to co-design some new things, maybe some body sensors. And educators, where are the gaps? As I mentioned, the Fourth Age Salon, the over 80 learner, science and technology changing so fast we need to keep people current, where the new paradigms and breakthroughs are. Diversity and inclusion, which we've touched upon. We need to make sure that we are talking about things that are relevant to all of our communities. And artists and animateurs, which is where I end. This is the big opening for all of us. I see Dominic and Bee as animateurs in the French sense of artists who come in and make things happen in the community. And you will see some of the artists I've mentioned before. There will be in a month's time a conversation between myself and the woman in green who wants to talk about casting away the generational labels. She does not want to be referred to as a Gen Xer or me as a boomer. She says, no longer fits, it's no longer relevant. We're all perennials. So I think we've got a new language to invent. And so I'm really happy to have today to begin to do even more work with these antecedents and the time ahead. Thank you.